house, and I just want to be closer and more involved with what's going on in the area, especially with what's being planned down there at this time.
Terrific. Let me bring it back to the board. Any questions for Mr. Whalen? Mr. Donaldson? Mr. Grandy?
Through the chair, I don't have any questions other than just a comment. Thank you for applying, and I appreciate you volunteering. Steering committees and volunteers in the town are the lifeblood of the community, and I certainly appreciate anybody who volunteers in any position in the town of Plymouth. And thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grandy. Mr. Higgins?
I would echo Mr. Grandy's sentiments. Thank you. I don't have any questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Bennett?
Evening, Larry, and congratulations on all these folks who've turned out to support your candidacy.
You notice I'm sitting alone back here, right?
So I have one question for you. Is there anything that you see the Cedarville Steering Committee doing now that you think it should not do? And is there anything that you think the Steering Committee should be doing?
I have attended the last 2 meetings, and as far as what they're doing, I think they're doing, the right things. They're bringing stuff back to the planning board, giving suggestions. I think they have a good idea of what's going on in town, and for people that don't know, and I've been sitting in these meetings, we're talking about a rotary at Herring Pond Road. We're talking about either a set of lights or a rotary maybe at Hedges Pond Road. Both of those intersections are dangerous. Maybe some sidewalks going back and forth up and down there. So I think the plan's good, and that village is, I don't know, maybe it has a lot of potential, and I think that potential is starting to come to its head, and I think that it's moving in the right direction. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Mr. Smith?
No additional comments other than appreciate your volunteering and what you'll bring to the meetings.
Excellent. Thank you.
So thank you very much.
Excuse me.
Appreciate that. With that, I'm going to entertain a motion from the board.
Motion to support.
I have a motion to support Mr. Whalen for
I
the
would
Cedarville
second
Smith,
that.
and second from Mr. Higgins. Any further discussion? Seeing none and everyone present, I will call for a vote by hands. All in favor? It is unanimous.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Please make sure you get sworn in by the clerk's office before you attend your
will.
first meeting.
Absolutely. Thank you again.
Next on our agenda this evening, we have a public hearing.
Mr. Chair, if I may. Mr. Chair, fellow board members, I'm going to be recusing myself from this matter. I just want to thank you.
Thank you for letting us know, Mr. Higgins. The Plymouth Planning Board will hold a public hearing in the 1620 Courtroom, 26 Court Street, Plymouth, Massachusetts, on Wednesday, February 26, 2025, at 7:05 p.m. to hear the petition of Sheridan Home Builders, Inc., requesting a special permit required per Section 207-5.c.3 to construct 4 detached single-family houses totaling 5 units, and 207-5.c.4 to construct a detached 8-unit multifamily building as a village open space development, also called a VOSD, per Section 207-5.d.4 and dimensional table to waive the density limit, per Section 207-7 for inclusionary housing to create 8 affordable units, and per Section 203-6.c, Table 1, to waive the required front yard setback from a major street, located at 1234 State Road, Map 49, Lot 3A. The petitioner and/or his or her representative or any other person interested and desiring to be heard on this request should appear at the time and place designated. Good evening.
Good evening. Matt Sheridan, Sheridan Home Builders. Tonight I have a very we'll say brief presentation, because I have a small hunch there's going to be a lot of public comment. So I'll give you guys the quick overview of the project, and then any details that might come up we can certainly get into. Tonight, we're at 1234 State Road. It's a VOSD with an inclusionary aspect. Tonight, I have with me Kevin Flaherty and Stefani, and Andrew Golden for my title and deed work. You can see here where we are on State Road. Just to the north is Tiny Town. Directly across the street is High Point Treatment Facility, and it's this large parcel that you can see right there adjacent to Hyannis Road. A brief overview of the project. As I said, we're applying for a special permit through VOSD with inclusionary housing. We have 58% open space, a wooded buffer proposed to be remaining on Hyannis Road. It's 13 total units, 5 market, 8 inclusionary. We have unanimous support from the Manomet Steering Committee. All of the traffic on our proposed project will exit and enter on State Road. I do have a willingness to work with any direct neighbors on any reasonable improvements that we can make. The typical lot size on Hyannis Road, and this is an average over the entire road, is less than 10,000 feet. Our square footage per unit proposed is 8,500 square feet, and we're actually not asking for any parking or zoning setback relief. The only waiver we're actually asking for is the inclusionary housing aspect of the project. Just to highlight a few of these things that I just mentioned, I think it is important for the board to note that all traffic entering and exiting on State Road. This past weekend, we did an informational session with some of the neighbors. A lot of people that were on the Indian Brook Neighborhood Association ended up attending that meeting. I heard a lot of concerns, and I know one of them was traffic potentially on Hyannis Road. I am working with the direct neighbor on this project about potentially putting up a gate. If that happened, then obviously it would go on a Knox box, so the fire department, emergency vehicles would still be able to pass through. I am working with the direct neighbor on that. I can't commit to that at this time, but I do want to make the board aware that that was part of what I took away from that informational meeting on Saturday with doing something to potentially any traffic risk onto Hyannis Road, which we currently don't see any risk, but again, we are working towards alleviating that even further. Again, speaking to our Saturday meeting, I do still have an overwhelming willingness to work with the neighbors, whether that be a direct neighbor that's, in their opinion, really affected by this, given their proximity to where they live to it, or if it's somebody within the association where we need to work with them on potentially improving their association. This is an overall site plan. As you can see, we have a wooded natural buffer along Hyannis Road. That buffer is going to remain intact. Again, in our opinion, providing a nice buffer between our project and Hyannis Road. One of the things I did propose to some of the neighbors over the weekend was if they wanted to see a fence along Hyannis Road, I would be more than happy to do that for them. Again, if there was actual concerns about additional screening, we could certainly work on those things. So what you see in front of you right now, 1234 is an existing dwelling. It's shaded out in gray. That obviously is going to remain. Then you have 4 other single units next to and across the street from 1234. Those 5 properties are going to be sold at market rate. So Those 5 will be sold at market rate at today's values. And then just to the south of it, we have the proposed 8-unit multifamily building that is right here. And you can see the parking adjacent to the building. Again, we didn't have to ask for any parking relief at all. We had the number of spaces required per the zoning bylaw, which that was actually something we targeted because we didn't want this to be an overwhelming amount of asphalt or even invite people that potentially don't live within that building to come and park and try to take advantage of some of the neighborhood amenities. This is the
Excuse me, Mr. Sheridan, one moment. Sir, you have your hand up for some reason? Sir, so the way this works is Mr. Sheridan gets to do his presentation, goes back to the board, and then we open it up to public comment then. So at the time for public comment, you'll have the opportunity to ask your questions. Thank you. Please continue, Mr. Sheridan.
Thank you. This is the multifamily building that I was speaking of. You see the front elevation that's going to be facing Hyannis Road. The rear elevation is going to be facing our driveway, which runs parallel to State Road. So everybody on Hyannis Road that can see the building will actually be seeing the front face of the building. I'll also point out to the board that these new renderings were based off some feedback that we got from Manomet's steering committee about what they'd like to see for some architectural highlights on the building. The building itself is 8 studio units. The building's going to be sprinkled, and it'll have its own separate septic system from the other 5 single-family homes. The inclusionary aspects of this building are 8 studios, 4 of them are going to be 80% AMI, area median income, for those that don't know, and 4 at 60% AMI. One of these 8 units is going to have a veteran preference. I worked with Peggy Whalen the last couple of days on making sure that we could have that language in place to offer one of these units with a veteran preference, and she was all in favor of it and said that wouldn't be a problem at all. This is the first project in Plymouth that's actually voluntarily proposing 60% AMI on anything without any public funding. With that, I mean other developers can go in front of CPC, they can go in front of other town programs, and they can seek funding to try to buy down the AMI to make units more affordable. I'm proposing 60% AMI on half of these out of pocket. So no funding, no outside subsidies, purely out of pocket. The fact of the matter is the only reason why I'm offering half of them at 80 and not all of them at 60 is just out of fear that someday if the state and the Fed ever catches up with where the area median index should be for Plymouth, I still need to make sure the building is viable. But I do actually see all 8 of these being in that 60% range. Again, just speaking to the 60%, the only AMI right now at 60% in Plymouth is Housing Authority, Veteran, and Senior Programs, meaning all of them are publicly funded. That includes things like Habitat for Humanity, other, again, things that require outside funding and grants. So this will be the first project in Plymouth bringing units online at that 60% AMI. I do want to bring Andrew Golden up just to give the board a quick rundown on some of the title and deed work that we've done extensively on this project. And before I bring Andrew up, I just, again, want to reinforce to the board and everybody here my willingness to work with the neighborhood. And the reason why the density for this project is what it is to achieve that 60% AMI. We've heard it a million times. The unfortunate reality is to actually create truly affordable product, you need some sort of density, and that was the overall outcome of this, but that doesn't change my willingness at all to try to work with the neighborhood, with the association, and to try to actually create a relationship, since we are going to be there, hopefully working for, a little bit of time. With that, I'll bring Andrew up just to give you guys a quick rundown on the title and deed. Thank you.
Good evening, Andrew Golden on behalf of Sheridan Home Builders. So we did a title examination on this property, and then I personally went further back than what is normally required under Massachusetts standards, going all the way back to deeds and documents that go as far back as 1928. So 1234 State Road was part of all of coastal property as of 1944. It was all under common ownership, 1234, and the land comprising Indian Brook Association, now Hyannis Road, and all the roads within that development. That parcel, our parcel, was carved off. It was specifically accepted from that land when it was sold to a developer called Colony Beach. Colony Beach is effectively the successor to Indian Brook Association. And because we were accepted, we don't have any of the individual deed restrictions or neighborhood restrictions that apply to all the individual lots that Colony Beach put in place when they acquired ownership of all that land. So we don't have any restrictions, deed restrictions, as far as the use of the property. We do have beach rights. Those are included in our certificate of title and on the deed. And there is a 20-foot way that goes across the property, but that way, I don't want to call it abandoned because it's not been abandoned, but it's effectively landlocked because it crosses, would have been helpful to have a slide, but in any event, the land went all the way around like a U shape, right? And the way went from one lot to the other with no frontage on State Road. So when the developer carved up all those lots, they sold off a lot on either side of the adjoining bounds on 1234 State Road. There's no way that exists over those two properties. So the way effectively can't be accessed, but it is on our deed. And then I think ultimately they, I have to try and infer intent of a developer from the 40s. I think maybe they were going to use it as the road, but then they ended up constructing Hyannis Road and effectively didn't need it anymore. So that's my interpretation of why it exists, and that's pretty much it as far as the title's concerned.
I just want to clarify for the board really quick. So the way that Andrew was speaking of is essentially where our driveway is located. And the previous way, you can see the dwelling on the southern end of the site here was where the way actually ran through. So where the way was originally deeded out, a house now sits there. So the only way to actually access the quote-unquote way now is by going.
So, sorry, with this slide, I don't think it's helpful. So what I was saying before is that way only exists on 1234 State Road. So the dotted line, it started at the southern boundary line and it ended at the northern boundary line. It didn't extend into the land above it, to the north, or into the land south. So it was strictly to cut across because Hyannis Road, those lots to the east and the lots north and south was all one piece at one point. So it was just a way to cut across. I think, again, inferring intent from, a long time ago, they would probably thought about that's where the road might go through, but then they end up building Hyannis Road, and now that way is effectively, landlocked because it only exists on 1234 State Road.
Ladies and gentlemen, I didn't want to interrupt this early, but I'm going to. Planning Board has a written policy with respect to public comment. Public comment is done in an orderly fashion. It is done in a respectful fashion. We will listen to you and you will listen to others. You will do it without interrupting. If you are unable to do so, then you will be asked to leave. No one wants to stop you from speaking, but at the same time, you do not have the right to stop anyone else from speaking, and that includes interrupting. We behave in a respectful fashion in this room. This room was originally a courtroom. Many people sat in that courtroom and listened to a judge sitting where I sit today. They did so with decorum and respect. I carry on those traditions. We will give you all an opportunity to speak, and we will not take your opportunity away, but we will not tolerate anyone else taking someone else's opportunity away. We are an equal opportunity discussion here. If that is something you cannot abide by, that's fine. Feel free to leave now. Otherwise, we have rules in place. They're published rules. It's nothing new. We're not throwing anything surprising out at anyone. But if I hear another interruption, I will identify the person and I will ask them to leave. And please do understand, while we have never done it, we do have the authority to direct someone to leave. And I can also promise you, from historical events, interrupting this board and disrupting these proceedings does not work in your favor. My apologies, Mr. Sheridan.
Just one more note I do want to add for the board, that the multi-unit building, I will be owning and maintaining that, so in effect, managing the entire property. With that, I'll turn it over to the board and certainly answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sheridan. To staff.
Thank you. Good evening. This project is layering two different special permit procedures. It's the Village Open Space Development, which is a special permit that the planning board can issue to allow development in certain districts to increase density through the preservation of open space. So in essence, what we often see in a village open space development is a clustering of the residential components on a portion of the site to allow for the open space to buffer around the edge and to have an increased amount of open space preservation on a site you traditionally would not see in a conventional development of that site. So this project is exceeding what the minimum requirement is for that open space. In the VOSD, it's a 40% minimum. This project is proposing 58%, a little bit more than 58% of open space conservation. In addition, this project is layering on the affordable housing or inclusionary housing component of our bylaw. Again, this is a special permit that the planning board can issue to allow in certain residential districts an increase in density to allow for and incentivize affordable housing development. We know that with the recent housing market continuing to grow and the cost of construction ever increasing, it's getting harder and harder to develop affordable housing. So in a situation where you're seeing inclusionary housing used to not only meet a minimum of 10% of those units that are proposed, but to go above and beyond. This development, while there's 13 total residential units on this site, it will be 5 homeownership, single-family homes, and then the 8 that are multifamily, the studio apartments. All 8 of those will be affordable. So that is exceeding. In addition, it's not at the standard of 80% area median income. 4 of those units are being proposed at 60%, which is a deeper affordability. That is something that we have heard from the community is desperately needed. We, as a town perspective, and I know from the boards, have been encouraging developments to do this, but again, it's an encouragement, it's not a requirement. So for these reasons, planning staff is recommending issuance of this permit. We do have a draft decision prepared for you that includes a list of conditions. Some of those are fairly standard, making sure any back payment, taxes, and title, recording of the deed is all provided to the town before the issuance of building permits and certificate of occupancy. For this project, we also note that there is a presence of wetlands on the site, so the applicant will need to coordinate with the Conservation Commission to ensure if any filing is necessary and what provisions that might be necessary of that filing would be taken care of. With the affordable housing component, as you heard, Mr. Sheridan has already been in communication with Peggy Whalen, who is our Director of Community Development. That is the office housed within planning and development that oversees subsidized housing and making sure that all of the paperwork that goes into that, the agreements and everything to make sure that we're meeting the state requirements is fulfilled and submitted to the state so that those units can be included on the state's subsidized housing inventory for the town. So we would just require that that partnership continue to make sure that is fulfilled. We are recommending that to the maximum extent possible, there be a local preference to allow for these affordable units to have a first priority for a certain degree of the units to people who are either currently a resident in town or currently employed by the town. That can be whether it's town government, the schools, fire, any public safety, any municipal position. And then in addition, a veteran's preference, which as you've already heard, Mr. Sheridan is interested in having a veteran's preference for at least one of these units. Further, we would just note that we would like any comments that are made from fire and engineering departments to be accommodated in the final set of plans that goes to building. I'll turn it back to the board.
Thank you. One question from me, Ms. Lind. We have a 10% requirement when it comes to new development, correct? So if it's 10% of all new development for multifamily, for multi-building development must be an affordable unit, 80% AMI, correct?
Correct, for developments with 6 or more units.
Okay, so if this were built as with 5 new units, then there would be no affordable requirement, is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you. Board members, any questions for staff? Seeing none, I'm going to open this up for public comment. I'm going to let people know, I'll call on people. So we have per our written policy, 3 minutes. If you need more time beyond that, you may request it. The board may grant it or not grant it. I can also say that, again, we do not wish to limit public comment in any way, but at some point, you'll note that things may start getting repetitive. People are saying the same things over and over. Trust me when I say we are listening and we do understand. So at some point, if it becomes repetitive, we're going to end up, we'll close the public comment at that point. We're going to hear from as many people as it makes sense to hear from. But please, think about your comments in terms of what other people have said. You first, and then you following. And when you get to the microphone, if you can please identify yourself and your proximity to the proposal, if that's something that makes sense.
Yes.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Megan O'Connell, and I am a resident of Indian Brook, and I'm the president of the Indian Brook Board of Directors. It was not possible due to time constraints to hear the opinions of all
I'm sorry, is your microphone, can you check if that microphone on? Yeah,
Hello?
I apologize. Sometimes the acoustics
Fine.
don't help us here, so we just want to make sure that we hear you.
Would you like me to start over?
No, you go right ahead.
Okay. It was not possible due to time constraints to hear the opinions of all of our neighborhood's residents, and I'm aware and respectful of the varying viewpoints that exist regarding this project. I'm speaking tonight representing our board of directors. This statement in no way represents my or my board's views on the need for or placement of inclusionary housing in the town of Plymouth. We are simply opposed to the density of this project and the impacts that it will have on our residential neighborhood. Before I continue with my statement of objections, I wanted to make note that during a meeting that the builder held on Saturday morning, there were several questions raised regarding what rights were conveyed in his deed and what or who had agency over the right-of-way on his property. Mr. Sheridan claimed relative ignorance over any of these things, so I asked him if he was willing to share his title research with us, and he replied yes. However, my efforts to get that from him have been unfruitful. We therefore began our own title research and have discovered that there is mention in his deed of Colony Beach Incorporated having agency over that right-of-way, which of note has been altered over time. Colony Beach and Pilgrim Beach merged in 1989 to form Indian Brook Association Incorporated. This is codified in our Articles of Incorporation that is filed with the state of Massachusetts. With this knowledge, I called Mr. Sheridan's attorney and asked them to postpone the planning board hearing until we could both research this issue and sit down and talk about it. I was informed by the attorney that Mr. Sheridan was unwilling to postpone and would not sit down with us if we were to continue to oppose the project based on density. I feel strongly that the legal aspects of this right-of-way need to be resolved one way or the other before this project can proceed. Indian Brook Association would at a minimum like enough time to have a professional chain of title done, as well as a legal assessment of the right-of-way and its impact on Mr. Sheridan's proposal. The Indian Brook Association is opposed to this project on the grounds of density and of the insufficient and improper planning of the road that will service this development. The plan for Ocean Village will have a minimum of 35 to 40 people living on a space for 20 to 25 under current regulations. Simple math tells us that this development as planned will have anywhere from 18 to 30 cars coming and going from it each day, all according to the builder to and from the state road entrance. This number of vehicles is likely equal to or more than the number that enter our neighborhood through Hyannis Road on any given day. Yet because the developer states he only needs a driveway to service his condo complex of 35 to 40 residents, he will not be addressing the issue of safe and adequate access. He stated that he will not do a traffic study, does not need proper curb cut, and appears that he is not beholden to any other rules and regulations of subdivision roads, even though it is likely clear to everyone in this room that this is indeed a subdivision development being called a condo complex.
You're at your 3 minutes. How much more time do you need?
30 seconds.
Please go ahead.
I'd like to address two final unrelated points. The first is the water runoff and drainage issues. The developer claims that they will have a complex system of pipes and drains to deal with the water issues in the area. However, I find it difficult to believe that there has been any studies or research done on the volume of water that comes down off of our neighborhood and towards State Road and the severity of this with the high water table. I also want to address the open space concept that the developer is incorporating into this plan, which is simply a matter of convenience and not any genuine concern for open space. He was clear to us on Saturday morning that if he did not get his way and get this plan through the planning board on Wednesday night, he would be clear-cutting the lot. That is all.
Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Good evening. Yes.
Hi, my name is Andrea Dickinson, 22 Ellisville Drive. The concept of affordable housing scares a lot of people, when in reality what they're concerned about are 40B projects. 40B projects don't have to follow local zoning regulations, often to the detriment of the communities they're in, and aren't actually affordable. 40B developers often say in order to actually make their units truly affordable, with a deeper percent area median income, they require subsidization from the town. What's being proposed here is not a 40B, and the affordable units being promised here are not contingent on subsidization from the town or any other source in order to offer these much-needed, truly affordable units. I, for one, am thrilled about this project. I've lived in Indian Brook for 7 years, and like most people voicing concerns, I'm lucky to have bought while the market was still reasonable. I bought my house for $352K back in 2018, but now it's near impossible to find anything under $500K. A price point not attainable for the majority of young adults and lower-income folks that our local economy depends on. The majority of people who work in Plymouth cannot afford to live in Plymouth. This proposal by Sheridan Home Builders is exactly the kind of solution that Plymouth needs to solve our housing affordability crisis. They're taking the initiative to offer a lower percent area median income units voluntarily. This affordability is only feasible due to the density. They've reached out to the neighborhood about making badly needed improvements to Hyannis Road proactively. They held a community outreach session at the Manomet Library to get our feedback, even though they weren't required to do so. Too many developers do only what they absolutely have to in order to get their projects approved, but Sheridan Home Builders is demonstrating they're different and they want to be a good neighbor. Like most projects, even if somebody thinks it's a good idea, they say, "Not in my backyard, do it somewhere else." Let's not be those people and turn away a great project when it's proposed to us. Let's not decline a good proposal and by default let 40Bs steer the way. Let's be good neighbors ourselves. Anyone who knows me knows I'm passionate about open space, but I also recognize the housing crisis in our community and many others in Massachusetts over the lack of affordable housing. There are certainly places where open space should be the priority, and there are places where housing makes sense. Housing makes sense here. It's already disturbed land adjacent to other housing and walking distance to a school, a church, a recreation area, and several other local establishments, potential places of employment. This project should advance through the process, including review by Conservation Commission, as I believe it seeks to strike a responsible balance between housing and environmental concerns. This is the type of housing solution Plymouth needs. I enthusiastically support this project, and I hope our neighborhood and your board will support it too. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening, gentlemen, and thank you for your time. I'm Sean McEnroe. I live at 41 Hyannis Road. I have a couple of issues with this. There is a river running right behind all those properties. We don't have town sewer down in these locations. They're having a major issue with nitrogen off-gassing from septic systems near waterways, and waterways getting polluted from these off-gases. I oppose the 8-unit building. That is a lot of water runoff going into a septic system and leaching field at the same depth as that river that's within 200 feet of it. I believe if that river becomes polluted, it's going to destroy the value of our neighborhood. It runs off into the ocean down next to the beach. Also, the average size of the houses in the neighborhood. They run from 1,000 to 1,500 square feet in that area. This new 8-unit building, that's going to be over 4,500 square feet. It's going to be so out of place, it's going to ruin the look of the neighborhood and destroy the feel. I won't be comfortable driving by this building at night when I come home from work. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Okay. In the front here first, and then you afterwards, sir.
Hi, my name is Sue Murphy. I've lived in Indian Brook for 12 years. I live on Bay Terrace. As nice as it was for Mr. Sheridan to show up Saturday to talk to us about his development, one of the things that happened was he brought 2 sets of plans with him. He brought a set of plans that did not show the affordable housing unit, and then he showed this one, and he basically said to us, if this does not go through, I can build this other development without getting any special permits. And I think that needs to be taken into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Just for everyone's clarification, so the planning board has the copy of that. Because this is a proposal for a village open space development, the developer is actually required to show us the difference between an as-of right and what they're requesting. So that's not anything unusual. That's something that's actually required of the developer for us to consider the VOSD project. Good evening, sir. Please, go right ahead.
My name is Jerry Lutz. I live at 38 Hyannis Road. I've been there since 1989, along with some of my other real close neighbors right here that are going to be impacted by this new development. I have one question. I don't know if I can direct it at the builders.
What you do is you direct it to the board, and
No,
then
I can direct it. I
and
can
then
direct
after
it
you're
to
done,
I'm
we'll
sure-
direct it to the
I'm sure they
developer.
can hear me, but my thing is, I've seen a lot of accidents on that corner. That's a bad corner right there. In the past 30-something, 5, 6 years I've been there. The river, conservation. Conservation passed this? Has conservation passed this? Has this gone through conservation first? I know I had to go through a lot to put my home in, because I do abut that 100-year-old man-made canal that conservation keeps a close eye on. So I'm concerned with the leaching and the septic myself, to be truthful with you. Why not one-family homes? I know why not one-family homes, because the builders want to jam as many people in there as they can and make their walls big and fat, is what they want to do. I don't know why Kenny Kroll, I think Kenny Kroll should be here tonight. I don't know if Kenny Kroll has anything to do with this. Kenny Kroll abuts the other end. This is a dead-end street, 1, 2, 3, 4. You calling this a dead-end street? You don't want to answer?
Again, sir,
We were
you direct your
talking
comments to the board. You don't direct your comments to anyone else. You direct the comments to
So
us.
I don't understand, they're talking in the future of being able to get out through the end of this new state road. I don't understand it. I don't understand, low income to me, I don't know why nobody ever says Section 8. But, I mean, I think a couple of these neighbors should come up and address also is, I wouldn't want, you're directly in front of them, Ron. You're gonna wanna stare at that one building there? Could you pop that building back up for me on the screen?
Lauren, go ahead, why
The
don't you put that,
multifamily building?
if we can put that back up?
How high is the elevation? The irrigation was addressed. The first woman that come up here more or less said, all in a nutshell. I don't know who the second woman was that come up here. Obviously, a friend of Sheridan's, but I wouldn't want to stare at that.
Sir, you're at 3 minutes. How much longer do you need?
I wouldn't want to stare at that. A
I
couple
had-
minutes. I'll be done in a couple minutes.
No, no,
I'm on
not
my
a couple
way
of
out
minutes.
here. All right?
You've got a few seconds left. Please, go ahead, you have another 30 seconds.
I wouldn't want to stare at that building. Low-income housing in my neighborhood, the neighborhood has been there for eons. Nice and quiet neighborhood, nice beach, and you people want to wreck it.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
My name is Alana. I'm 18, and I live in Ellisville Drive. My objection doesn't stem from the affordable housing part of that. I think it's great. My concerns lie in the environmental aspects of this project. As it's been said many times, this is a very dense settlement, and to do that, obviously, there's a lot of trees that need to be cut down and a lot of people that need to be around there. It was already said there will be more cars in the parking lots. My concerns lie in the long term. So more pavement means it's not permeable anymore. State Road will have more flooding risks. The gentleman before me, or the gentleman before that, someone brought up that the septic systems, that is a lot of septic systems on one lot. That is a lot of nutrient pollution, especially so close to a wetland. Wetlands are extremely fragile and valuable ecosystems. And to have that river behind it, for that to be at risk for runoff, litter, whatever, it will go down to the ocean. And coasts are also very fragile ecosystems, and our beach is a very important aspect to our neighborhood. And I feel like, sorry, I shouldn't say that, but in what I've seen today, I have not seen any considerations to the long-term environmental aspects or even the short term with the dense amount, because sorry.
It's okay, take your time.
Like I said, the affordable housing I have no problem with. More of my issue lies with how dense it is. I feel like if it was just the affordable housing and not the additional four builds, I feel like this would be a lot more feasible, a lot more sustainable. But with the current plan, I feel like that's not feasible. But that's my 2 cents, 3 minutes.
Thank you very much for coming forward, appreciate it.
Hi, my name is Jessica Moschino. I've lived on Hyannis Road for 21 years at this point, raised my kids here, and I think as I listened to Mr. Sheridan talk about the unit and the setup itself, it sounds like a contained area. It isn't. It's absolutely not a contained area because we have deeded beach rights, which means people that are going to be in these homes, including the transient turnover every year rentals, are going to be driving down our roadways that we maintain. It's going to be, whether it's Colony Beach, whether it's Hyannis Road, we already have enough cars going through there, and now they can't access that through that driveway or whatever that way they're going to have to go through our roadways to get there. So it is an increase in traffic. I don't have an issue with the affordable component. I do have an issue with the multifamily building. Putting that many people, and again, to what's been described already, most of our homes are 1,000 square feet, 1,500 square feet, mine included, to then all of a sudden have the entire footprint of the neighborhood at the entrance changed, I think is unfortunate. And I do think it should be considered in terms of the traffic. That turn is incredibly dangerous with just one family coming out of there. We're now going to have traffic going through on both sides, going both directions. It's incredibly dangerous. So I am opposed to the plan. Much more in favor of the additional plan that you showed. B, whatever that was. Thank you.
Thank you. George first, and then afterwards.
I'm George Brown on Ellisville Drive. First of all, the builders made it quite clear that all access is only going to be from State Road. The other end there will be probably for fire access, and it'll probably be wind-up gated. I don't think the Crowells want much more traffic through their yard than that. From my opinion, they don't want any traffic through their yard. That's the other end. This development has several things. From what's said, I know the state will not let them take trees down on State Road because 3A requires a tree buffer from state law. But this seems to be well situated, and I don't have all the sheets, but they did appear to address septic direction away from Indian Brook, which was key to me because Indian Brook, which is that waterway, flows down behind houses on Hyannis. It goes under Cod Road and on its way under Seaview to the ocean. Back in 1978, we had Don Kent's snow flurry. There was an immense buildup of snow around the reservoir and around this end of State Road. When the spring came, it didn't get to have a snow melt. It was a wash melt because we had 4 days of solid rain. The reservoir backed up. It did overflow back onto this property. Through that tree anchor, there's a ditch there, and then it flowed into the overflow bed of the brook without any problems going up into the area they're proposing to build. So I really can find no reason to object to it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We had somebody next to the gentleman, yes, first, and then.
Could we go back to the plot plan? Thank you. My name's Ron O'Hara. I live at 15 Hyannis Road, which is pretty much at the intersection of Soul Road and Hyannis. The next property is 17 Hyannis Road. Our lot line is pretty much the low level of the neighborhood. This map doesn't really show topography. I drive up an incline to get to my house. When I stand at the opening of my garage door, my feet are pretty much at the roof lines of all the other existing houses down below us. We have no storm drains in our neighborhood whatsoever, no catch basins. Over the years, I've fought with water by myself. I have underground pipes to move water. I just flooded, and I had a sump pump going in my cellar last week when we had that ice, rain, snow. The water runs through this neighborhood. We actually have to walk uphill to get to the beach, and we have an 80-foot bluff. So everybody above us, which is Ellisville Road, Seaview Drive, that water just rushes downhill on the surface. It has nowhere to go. And if you look at the maps, this lot that they're proposing is actually called a floodplain. If you stood in my driveway and looked down upon it, you would see it is a floodplain just by the shape and look of it. we have a water problem, but you're talking about 5, probably 6 foundations being dug, which is going to eliminate water absorption. How do we keep the rainwater away from the river? The river is active 365 days a year, and we really have a rain runoff problem. The second issue is the driveway. When we moved in 1985, Hyannis Road was a dirt road. When we moved in, the Kroll family owned the buses for the schools in the town of Plymouth. The dad left Kroll, decided before Hyannis Road was paved that he was going to pave his own driveway through this lot. And he made some agreement. Mr. Golden left, Attorney Golden left. And I haven't seen any paperwork as to what that agreement was, but Mr. Kroll, the dad, really did that so that he wasn't raising dust on Hyannis Road, which was dirt. And that's how that driveway became what it is today, the 1, 2, 3, 4 entrance to their property. That was all it was. It was never a road. It was never a driveway just to the farmhouse. It was a cut-through for the school buses. And we watched that happen after we moved in '85. So there's some discrepancy on how that road was created from what I'm hearing today. We want a fence. We don't want a gate. We've had fires, and we've had fire trucks come up Hyannis Road to deal with our neighborhood. There's a fire hydrant right in front of my property at 15 Hyannis Road. I don't know where the fire hydrant is on State Road that would service this property. If they put up a fence, how are the firemen going to get through from my hydrant to their property? And we certainly don't want to cut through at the end onto the Kroll property, which would be now the grandson of the people that own the buses.
Okay, so we're coming up on 4 minutes now, so.
So there's some issues still, and we feel rushed trying to make a decision on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You had wanted to speak? Yeah. No. The woman, sure, okay. Just want to get everybody in turn.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I am Farron. I live on 41 Hyannis Road. I am 14. According to my research, there are red-bellied turtles. They live near rivers in Plymouth, Massachusetts. In 2007, there were 400 to 600 breeding-age turtles. They do help the environment, and they live down the river. They help seagrass and coral reefs, so it helps the ocean and our environment too by taking down insects too. And with just the property, it cuts across the river where they live, and that would really cut their lifespan. I fumbled. Yeah, that's it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Pam, and I live on 5 Pike Road. You know, this is a big quandary, obviously. I love the idea of affordable housing. At the same time, when we moved into the community, we liked the community because it was individual houses, and you got to know your neighbors, and it was great and everything. The funny thing is, at the same time we're discussing this, if you look at Hyannis Road, it's just basically a gravel pit. Nobody ever wants to come to our house that way because for some reason the town doesn't feel the need to pave that road. So there's a part of me like, our community is just as important. Why can't we have decent roads in the neighborhood? Have you guys ever been on Hyannis Road? Yes. I mean, you could lose a cavity driving down there. So we also have to think as a community, if the building doesn't go through, if this doesn't work out, what's going to go there instead? I personally, if I lived right around there, I would not be happy to be looking at a high building. That's not why we moved in the neighborhood. That doesn't directly affect me. But all I'm saying is that why don't we take care of Indian Brook, the people who live there, and pave Hyannis before we start bringing more in? I'm encouraged that you have only one entranceway into off of State Street, right? So that makes me feel a little bit better. And that's really all, so thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Kate Jenkins-Brown, 21 Ellisville Drive. I'm here as a resident and as a realtor to tell you that Plymouth has a large problem. I've got two clients, one of whom teaches in your school system, one of whom is a veteran firefighter on your fire station, and neither one of them can afford to move into town. Affordable housing is a necessity, and this seems like a reasonable and responsible way to do it. If that building is preventing people from having a view of High Point or listening to the ambulance sirens that are coming in at all hours, I'm not sure that that is not an improvement over the situation. There are things that reduce property values, and I think people are mistaken about what those things are. And it's not affordable housing. And affordable housing is not by definition Section 8. Affordable housing is people who are working for a good wage and still can't afford to get into our community. Mr. Sheridan was fortunate that he could afford to buy the property that was in distress. A lot of first-time home buyers are being turned away because the same properties that are the appropriate size for them do not any longer qualify for FHA or VA loans because of the repairs that are necessitated by the senior citizens that can't afford to keep their houses up. If we continue to build for 55-plus communities, we're going to have an aging population that the firefighters are going to have to bring the ambulance to pick up to then burden our healthcare system that can't support them either. We need to take advantage of an opportunity to provide housing for the people who need the housing and provide services to our community. These are studio apartments. It's not as though they're bringing 9 people into each of these apartments. I don't see that the density of this is any different than the density that already exists in the neighborhood. These properties are a necessity. I know I'm not making any friends or fans. I probably won't get elected secretary ever again. Not a problem. But as he's still going to own that property, we can ensure that it's going to be maintained properly, as opposed to any independent individual house that I could buy, I could paint puke green, I could plant corpse plants, I could do things that would actually reduce the value of the properties and impinge upon the value of other people's homes. But the value of your home isn't realized until it is sold. And when it's sold, the comps that are compared are comparable houses. So an 8-unit rental property is not going to impact the appraisal of your home. A ranch isn't the same as the colonial that's on the ocean front. A raised ranch that's 3 streets away from the ocean and doesn't have to use Hyannis Road, which I do use Hyannis Road all the time, and there's a lot of volume of traffic, a lot of near misses as we try to get through that road. So the fact that this is going to be on and off of State Road and not off of Hyannis is, again, less of a problem. As the tree barrier is still going to be there, I don't think that the visual impact, which aesthetics are obviously something that impacts the value of the home, I don't think it's going to be that prominent of an issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you. In the back, please come forward.
How's it going? Thanks for having us.
Good evening.
How are you? Ryan Kelly, 17 Hyannis Road, right across the street. Probably one of the youngest, I think, in the neighborhood. I bought my house 5 years ago at 25. So, you know, I definitely get it, affordable housing, and no issues with that. The concern is, for me, living across the street, being in the neighborhood, is the constant turnover. And with affordable housing, how do you monitor that just one person will be in there if that's the one that signed up? So every year they need to requalify. There's an income check, there's an asset check as their income goes up. But what if they have a baby or they're married and have a baby? I mean, that's 3 people. It gets complicated. So I'm just curious what the builder or what the property management, because it's Charity Properties, would do for that. And I think the traffic, that would be my other concern. You heard that earlier. So not against development and progress, really just an 8-unit building in the neighborhood I don't think fits in. And for me, looking across the street, not in love with it, to be honest. So thanks for the time, and hopefully take it into consideration.
Thank you. Okay, I've got One in the back, please, come forward.
Hi, thank you. My name is Eric Nielsen. I live at 43 Ellisville Drive.
Yep, just make sure you speak, just make sure you speak into that microphone so we can hear you.
I live up above, so we go up an incline. We live up above this area. Our runoff would actually go down into the area. The gentleman before was right. The topography of the area is not really accurate. And the wetlands is actually Indian Brook, and Indian Brook snakes through our neighborhood and empties out into Cape Cod Bay. And we swim and walk through Indian Brook. You know, I'm sure many of the neighbors have seen me with my inner tube and hanging out at Indian Brook. So we do have concern with the additional septic tank, but I'd hate to say it, with budget homes comes budget cars, and I've been there myself. You get leaking oil, brake fluid, antifreeze, transmission fluid. You know, it happens. So, I don't want to mock it. I'm just saying it's a factor. So, and we'll be basically swimming in the water from that. So that's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
Good evening, thank you. My name's Neil Harrell. I'm her husband. We live at 5 Pike Road. I think we moved in 4 years ago. So, first off, I applaud what appears to be the willingness of the developer to work with the neighborhood and address the concerns. But I do think it's important for whatever the process is for granting approval, variances, what have you, that we have to take into, and I won't repeat what everybody said, 'cause all the points were excellent, but there were a number of assertions made here tonight. An assertion of a willingness, an assertion of a potential legal dispute. Okay, so how are we going to be ensured that those items, and probably even more importantly, the conservation items, the runoff, the sewage, all of those, how are we going to be ensured that they are actually ultimately solved for and thoroughly researched before making a decision? I'm not questioning the job, the process, or whatever, but if somebody actually does have a valid contestation on legal grounds, you know, we heard from the developer's attorney, but I don't think, I'm using bad terminology here, due process was necessarily followed. And let's assume, let's play it out that whatever variances or what have you, whatever the terminology is actually granted. What assurances do we have as a neighborhood, as a community, that the developer actually does follow through on that? Okay, because once you achieve your end state goal, unless there's actually provisions for accountability, it really doesn't matter going forward. Nothing against you, but I'm a professional risk manager, and that's what I do for a living. Okay, you know, making sure we have not a guarantee, but we can account for that, some clawback or what have you. So, and the last point I'd like to make, I know I'm running up on time, is we talk about property value not being impacted, but property value only really comes into play when it comes time to sell. These folks were longtime residents of the neighborhood, moved into the neighborhood because the neighborhood represented certain quality of life aspects for them. And I think, other than value, what you're hearing from them is you are impacting directly their quality of life and the reasons they choose and continue to remain in that neighborhood. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. In the back, sir. Yeah,
I'm sorry, I just had one more concern.
very briefly, sir, we tend to only allow people to speak
The main
once.
building, the 8-unit building, if that does go through, is it possible that could become 2 4-unit buildings and cut it in half, make it smaller, make it blend in more with the area? That's just a suggestion.
Okay.
I would appreciate it if you guys thought about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir. You got to go to the microphone and speak to us, please.
Jay Lucas, Ellisville Drive. I still want to know how many bedrooms are in these individual units.
They're studio apartments.
The individual houses that are
Oh,
also...
in the individual houses? Okay, well, ask the developer to put that in, to explain.
How many bedrooms?
Well, we will put that question to the developer.
Okay.
Okay, okay, please. No, yeah.
Hi, I'm Terry O'Hara, 15 Hyannis Road, which is directly across the street. And I just want to recap, I think I'm the last one. And, you know, thank you for hearing all of this. And I just want to say that we, as far as due diligence, I did look up a lot on your websites on all the planning and all that. And yes, he was kind enough to meet with us, but, you know, it says in your online that he does have that. We should be notified. And we weren't notified about the Management Steering Committee. We didn't know anything about this until we got the letter from the Planning Board. So I do have a concern with the land, with the Indian Brook going through there. The young girl said a great thing about the sea turtles. I was a teacher, so I know that we do have the red-bellied turtles. There's issues going on with all of that, the rainwater, and then the access way. We've been here for just about 40 years, and it didn't go out on State Road until Kroll's bought the property and did it. Now, I don't know if they got a permit for that or what happened, but it was just an access. And there's never been anything in front of that. And it does flood. I'm concerned all about proximity to schools, and, you know, if you have runoff and overflow and sewage, we all have septic systems. They have to be pumped on a regular basis. We're up on a hill, so ours is very deep. You do have backup. We've had all of our neighbors on the whole Hyannis have flooding. We all are flooded. So it's going down across State Road. We don't have any berms. There's no way for the water to seep into the ground, so now you're adjusting all of that. So you know, there's plants and animals and the whole ecosystem. Plus, we've been here. We bought that. There weren't a lot of houses when we bought. We love that neighborhood. We love our neighborhood. And to change it now, I mean, I'm not against affordable housing, honestly, but I think it's not the appropriate spot for it. And the traffic is horrendous. And I know he wasn't doing a study on it, but you come out Hyannis Road or that access road, and you have to look both ways. Plus, you have the school up there, you have the park, and then you have High Point. There's a lot of traffic issues. And then kids are crossing over there to go to the park. It's a nightmare. So that's my big concern with all of that. So I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Let's go to, do we have people on Zoom who wish to speak?
We do. I see 3 hands on Zoom already. If there's anyone else who wishes to address the board, please indicate by raising your hand. I'm going to ask you to unmute in the order that I've seen you, so we'll go to Fran Claremont first.
Good evening.
Hi, Fran Claremont. I'm a resident on Seaview Drive. I've been there 25 years. I've listened to this meeting very intently, and I thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. My concern is the environment and how this project will negatively or could negatively impact it. And I encourage the board to be thoughtful and careful and not to rush into doing this project without having due process and analysis so that there's no negative impact to the Indian Brook itself or the runoff into the ocean. So, and the other concern I have is I got the feeling after listening to the developers that this project is not static but dynamic, that could change over time. They could, I don't know whether they could add buildings or not, but that is a concern. And whenever you change the topography of the area, you get drainage issues. I've seen it happen multiple times. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Next, we'll hear from Brent Risch.
Hi, my name is Brent Risch. My wife is Sarah. We moved there a number of years ago. We're on 26 Seaview Drive. We're a number of streets away, but we are also aware acutely of how incredibly difficult it is with I believe, if I remember correctly, it's a 45-mile-an-hour speed limit along the main road, of turning out onto that road. Now, I have a full-size truck, and if somebody's coming in the opposite lane, not into my lane, I will wait because there's a narrow road that's difficult access and there's high-speed traffic. So I also echo the concern of many of the members here, where I think that there may be an access issue. We weren't even aware a number of years ago when we bought the place that there was sort of a rehab facility across the street. And that presents an issue because it's in very close proximity to where we're turning out of the neighborhood. So now you've got not only the high-speed traffic, not only, the difficulty of the narrow road onto that main road, but you also have, opposing traffic coming out. So you're sort of adding another road right next to another road on a very difficult road to begin with. Now, the other thing was when we built, or when we bought in that neighborhood, we also didn't expect that there's going to be a variable sort of who knows what placed into that location. We also are not opposed to, low-income housing necessarily with the proper stipulations, but we were never notified, right? We never received a letter. And I'm also not, feeling real friendly at this juncture because it sounds like, with some remarks about, oh, well, we might just clear cut the neighborhood or, we might just do that, whatever it is that we want to do. It doesn't sound like, everybody's concern has been addressed. So I feel like we need to, have a list of concerns. We need to make sure that, all this drainage issue and all the turtles or whatever have been addressed before we start going forward with a major project that can affect a very small neighborhood that also says, hey, guess what? You also have beach access. By the way, we have a little golf cart so that we can even park at the neighborhood association, because if you want to go to the beach, I want to say maybe there's room for 4 cars. So I have no idea how you're going to add 15, 18 more persons there. And again, that's just being conservative because you can have multiple people shacking up in these locations. So I'm not really sure of the sustainability of this location for this particular type of development. I mean, this is a very small neighborhood. It's an extremely small beach community, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Skiff, could you please identify yourself before you address the board?
Yeah, hello, my name's Ken Martin. I live on 41 Ellisville Drive. I think a couple of things that I have concerns with is the beach rights. Our development in our deed, and the deeds that go back to 1941 when this development was created, it was created for single-family homes, deeded beach rights, the use of all public property and all of development property, and all the roads were private. I've heard people talk about the town coming and paving Hyannis Road. Well, if they do that, is it no longer private? That's one of my concerns. I don't believe we're looking at what the deeds in this neighborhood are. If that property is separate, then it does not have rights to the deeds to the beach, and this really needs to be looked at. I believe that's the basic stuff we need to look at first. I grew up in this neighborhood. I've been here probably longer than most people. I've been here, we moved here in 1971. I was a kid. I went into that river. I found salamanders in there. I've watched that river overflow into everyone's backyards. Everyone's backyards all the way down there. I've watched it flow over Cod Road. I've seen so much stuff happen to that river. So granted, when that river was really heavy, you had a bog that used to drain out, and they'd pump that water out, and it would have to run off. Now, I know in some of the old maps that that river and that area going all the way down to the ocean, it had something to do with the bogs, and that was separate from our neighborhood. I just know that I think we're not hitting the right points here of why we're supposed to be single-family homes, and this is what's been in our deeds forever, and not multifamily homes in this neighborhood. So we need to determine whether that property is even in our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jimmy, please state your full name before addressing the board.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Hi, my name's Jimmy Kelleher. I live at 135 Seaview Drive. I'm opposed to this project for a variety of reasons, but I'm going to stick to one. I'm trying not to be repetitive, but people have discussed these roads. These are effectively single-lane roads. If you allow people to start building high occupancy buildings in these neighborhoods like Indian Brook, Manamet Beach Shores, Cedar Grove, if you start building high occupancy buildings in these neighborhoods, you're going to have to start developing double lane roads and really focusing on the roads. You're going to have to redo the whole neighborhoods. They're already overworked and just, I don't want to be repetitive, but they cannot handle the current volume as it is. And I'm sticking to that one reason. There are I live in the neighborhood. I've lived in the neighborhood for 6 years now. My family's lived in the neighborhood for over 20. We just don't like this. We don't want this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Susan Voigt.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I wanted to speak to being a parent of two small children, elementary age. I live on Seaview Drive, and there's 2 points I want to make. We live on these streets that do not have a lot of room, and in the busy time of the season, it can get very busy here. We have a lot of traffic and cars. I do not let my children walk alone on the streets because we're very cautious. We have tried to do things like put speed bumps. And so there will be traffic because people will be seeking out our beach, even if they want to go there or not. And we've had that issue with people coming to our beach, even though they haven't been in the association. So that presents a problem with our association with people coming to our beach. The other thing is people do litter. We are doing cleanups all the time in our neighborhood, and that's going to definitely pose some more issues around the littering just that happens on the beaches and those things. The other thing I wanted to bring up is that, and we talked about the traffic, and not having any traffic pattern study makes me very nervous because I've witnessed 2 accidents right with cars coming out of High Point and another car not seeing someone coming out of High Point, and saw 2 accidents right before my eyes. The other thing is Tiny Town Daycare, which has been there over 40 years, is right next to this development. Both of my children went to that daycare when they were younger. It was extremely, extremely difficult because of that curve where that is to pull out of that driveway and not getting clipped. It's a very nerve-wracking situation. And so I am concerned about that traffic and being parents of young children and just having more traffic in our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else on Zoom?
If anyone else on Zoom would like to speak to the board, please raise your hand now. Seeing no one.
Okay, back in the room, I saw the
Hi. I have a picture of the stream they're talking about and where it narrows. I don't know how far you did your survey for the environment, but were you aware of this bridge?
Sir, we don't do that. I'm sorry.
I apologize. Sorry about that. just wonder if there's a bridge there that's from the 40s or later, and it narrows down to approximately the width of my shoulders, a little bit more. I go in there and I clean that out when sticks and debris get clogged up. So I'm just wondering if their environmental plan included this narrow passage along with the culvert pipes that go under the roads. They're very narrow. So if there's more trash coming down the stream, I'll be in the stream a lot more cleaning it up. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So one other person back there?
My name is Paul Messenger. I live at 29 Hyannis Road. I bought my house in 2015 with a VA home loan.
Please, the microphone, just so we can hear you. Thank you.
My name is Paul Messenger. I bought my house in 2015 with a VA home loan. I've lived in that neighborhood for approximately 10 years. I did multiple combat deployments to be able to afford that house in that neighborhood with that density. The neighborhood is quiet. It's quaint, cute. Adding all these people to this neighborhood, I've lived in third world countries, multiple bad places. I'm not saying it's going to turn it into a bad place, but we don't want this density in our neighborhood. I think people talked about the environmental impact, and also I just want to reiterate the quality of life. The population definitely correlates to the home values, despite what the builder is saying. Most of these people have lived here for a longer period of time than I have, and I would say that 90% of them are opposed to this, and I am greatly opposed. Thank you, sir, for your time.
Thank you. Okay, please.
Hi, my
Good
name is
evening.
Joyce Daly, and I live at 20 Ellisville Drive. And this question is really for Mr. Golden. He mentioned that there were no deed restrictions, but he said it so quickly that if he gave a further explanation, I didn't catch it, or I would really like more information on that, if the board could procure it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Grandy.
I think we've heard from a lot of people this evening, and I'd like to bring it back to the board at this point, so I'd like to make a motion to close the public comment.
I have a motion to close the public comment.
Second.
I have a second from Mr. Donaldson. Any discussion from members of the board? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor of closing public comment? It is unanimous. Public comment on this matter is now closed. So understand, residents, now is our time, it's the board's time to ask the questions of the developer and to get the answers to the questions that you've asked. Your time is done, which means, again, no further questions from the audience, no interruptions from the audience, no jeering, no nothing. We've listened to you. We've respected your time. Please now respect ours as we do our inquiry. We're now doing the due diligence that you've asked us to do. Please don't interrupt us in doing it. Thank you so much. Mr. Sheridan and Mr. Flaherty, please come up. Before I start opening the board questions, let's try and address some of the comments and questions and concerns that were raised by the members of the community. First, answer the question, how many bedrooms are going to be in the single-family homes?
3 and 4 bedrooms.
3 and 4 bedroom homes, okay. With respect to Conservation Commission, staff had indicated earlier that Conservation Commission approval is going to be necessary to go forward. Can you talk about the process and what you're going to do in terms of going forward with that?
Yes, that's extremely cut and dry. We need full Conservation Commission approval to move forward with what we're proposing. We've already had all the wetlands delineated. A lot of our design actually is already with that in mind, with the rain gardens, with all of our drainage systems in place, but yes, without question, everybody with their questions on the environmental impact, we do need to go to Conservation Commission and we do need to get their approval. The only reason why we haven't done that yet is because I'm not going to take a project to Conservation Commission that the board isn't going to be in favor of. So depending how this goes, yes, the next step will be we get on Conservation Commission's docket.
Okay. Now, with respect to the septic design, et cetera, why don't you talk a little bit about that, what's planned? Also with respect to drainage in terms of maintaining water on site, which is required, your stormwater requirements.
So Kevin Flaherty from Flaherty and Stefani. I'm just going to have, there it is, Lauren, right there. So, sorry. So we have to obviously have Title V conforming septic systems. We're going to be applying to the Board of Health pending approval. We had to work with the DPW on drainage, water quality, and whatnot. So kind of like to give a quick overview of the septic. The current house at 1234 has a cesspool that comes right off the back of the house, which is back over this area right here. We're proposing to take all the individual houses and put it into a shared septic system, you know, an advanced kind of Title V system, a Presby system for a system that's over, 2,000 gallons per day right in this area right here. This multifamily building is going to have their own separate septic system. Again, Title V conforming, kind of best practices, and they're going to have a Presby system right in this area here. So we've moved everything we could as far away from the riverfront area and the wetlands as possible, outside of the 200-foot range from that end of things. From a water quality perspective, we had to account for a lot of this drainage coming through this way. So right now, all the water just runs off this impervious surface into the wetland down here at kind of a low point down by the driveway. It puddles, and then it rolls down into the wetland without being treated, without any sort of management involved at all. So we're proposing to have two separate water quality devices as well as a catch basin system to be able to treat that water appropriately, which is not being treated right now. So we're going to be making the situation better from a, basically a drainage perspective with the water that will now be clean going into the wetland area versus what is currently going on. So down here, we're going to have a drainage system over here, which is going to be a little bit of a subsurface drainage system. It's going to have a catch basin here, and then we're going to have a grate that goes across the entire front of the driveway. That's going to hopefully eliminate any sort of water that's running into State Road. Again, it's part of DPW's requirements that we make sure we reduce the peak flow from what's currently going on to a better situation. So part of the approval process is that we satisfy all engineering's comments to make sure that's done. And again, from a kind of it's not a repair, but a redevelopment standpoint, they want us to treat as much as possible. So again, part of the issue is all this asphalt currently not being treated, running right into the wetland. So water quality up here, which pulls out some of the, the pollutants that would be getting into the wetland, and kind of a Malay person treating the water so the outflow of whatever may run off into that wetland will go through deep sump catch basins, a water quality proprietary device, that type of thing to improve the water quality. And then just to speak to the Conservation Act, Matt did a little bit already, we'll have to file a full notice of intent. We've been in discussions with the conservation agent to make sure that this is an appropriate project within reason. We haven't submitted anything yet. Obviously, the first step was coming here. But we're obviously going to try, with our wetland scientists, make this project kind of a successful project through conservation as well as planning board and whatnot. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any technical questions.
Okay. I'm just going through my notes to make sure that there were no other questions. Now, again, I know your attorney, and you had apologized in advance, so the attorney had another commitment this evening, and he couldn't stay. We'll talk about that separately, so that'll be discussed as part of our discussions. I noted from the submission as well that this is not an area of critical environmental concern and that there are no endangered species on the site. That's correct?
That's correct. It's not natural heritage.
Right, so that's something that has been already examined. Again, I just want the neighbors to understand that this is not something that has just been thrown up, that there hasn't been any discussion. You've also submitted to DPW for their comments, and for, we've got DPW comments, we have, and I know you're working with fire on some of the other aspects, that's still waiting. So, at this point, I'm going to bring it back to the board for their questions. So, Mr. Bennett, please, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Most of my questions are technical in nature and probably more appropriate for Mr. Flaherty, but just Mr. Sheridan for a second. While I sat here, I looked up your certificate of title, your deed, and the land court plan. So this is land court land. So this is registered with the land court, part of the Supreme Judicial Court of Massachusetts. There is a 20-foot way. In fact, I can read it. It's subject to and with the benefit of a 20-foot wide way. Because it's land court, there is a plan. It shows the way pretty clearly. It does look like, from just kind of eyeballing it, that your driveway lines up with that way. So the question to you is are you obstructing that 20-foot way as it is shown on the land court plan?
No.
So I think that really kind of puts the question about the way to bed, honestly. As far as the drainage is concerned, I'm just going to be a little bit redundant here, but so Mr. Flaherty, is the drainage, I'm assuming, conforms to the Mass Stormwater Management Standards?
Correct.
And the Plymouth Storm Drainage Design Regulations,
Their
which are,
guidelines,
I have a passing familiarity with, are much more stringent, actually, than the state regulations.
Correct.
And so this all conforms with the town's?
Yeah, so most of the DPW comments really weren't involving drainage. We kind of made sure prior to even submitting that we were on the same page with what we needed to do and the best kind of fit for this development to make sure that all concerns were addressed.
Okay, and I just do want to say for those who do not deal with this on a regular basis, that the town of Plymouth DPW Engineering Department is very meticulous and very exact about how these regulations are applied and how they're met. So I have full faith in the DPW Engineering Department that this project, if it is approved by them, which from the comments I've seen, you've addressed their concerns. So I think we already covered the site is not mapped as habitat of rare species by Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Department?
Yes, that's correct. And that would be a part of the conservation filing anyways, as we go through more of a detailed look at all the requirements of that submission.
Right, so just for those who aren't familiar with, Natural Heritage and Endangered Species has mapped throughout the state areas where they believe is potential habitat. Doesn't mean it is habitat, and what happens is you have to file with them to ask them what species do you suspect are in this area, and then address them, study them, and so having an area not mapped by them is not a guarantee that there are no endangered species there, but it's a safe bet that the area there does not support those. And the question's been answered more than once. You have not yet filed with conservation. So I see that you are in the 100-foot buffer zone as well as the 200-foot riverfront zone.
So we're within the 100 feet of the bordering vegetated wetland that kind of extends off the riverbank area. So we have that 200-foot buffer, as you know, that extends off the top of the inland bank of the river. But there also is a bordering vegetated wetland that kind of extends off of that. So again, typical practice, anything within anything within 100 feet of that wetland buffer is under conservation's jurisdiction. So we'll have to, abide by all their standards and go through that process.
Okay, and despite the fact that I noticed on the land court plan and elsewhere, and somebody here mentioned it, that is actually a man-made dug canal, you're still subject to the Rivers Protection Act.
Well, so I guess there's the old plan. There's an artificial brook that runs through. That's part of that wetland system now, and then there's actually Indian Brook a little bit farther on. So we're outside of all those areas. So it goes back, and the plans are back from 75 years ago, or show all these things. Some are in place, but we've maintained kind of separation from all those areas, resource areas.
And as you mentioned, Conservation Commission is going to make darn sure of that.
Correct.
So again, I also have full faith in our Conservation Commission to follow the rules and to hold you to the rules as well. So I also know, is there a retaining wall, the back is the most northeasterly building?
Yeah, so as I think, many people mentioned, this is a pretty good slope that goes up towards Hyannis Road. So to give as much of a buffer as possible on Hyannis Road, we put a retaining wall. So all these houses are going to be cut into the bank, so they'll be even less visible from Hyannis Road as they sit kind of lower down next to the existing driveway that's in place there.
Okay, and do you have a sense of how, like, peak roof peak elevation versus the grade elevation of Hyannis Road? Are they going to be looking well over them or into the second floor windows?
I don't have that exact elevation, but it's probably pretty close to halfway through that second floor.
Okay, that's kind of I took a ride through there myself, and
somewhere in that range.
that's what it looks like, but certainly
But I don't have the exact information, but that's approximately correct. Yeah.
My eyeball is not necessarily calibrated to the right scale. There was one other thing I wanted to ask you about. So the 60% AMI, Mr. Sheridan, do you have any sort of numbers you can share with us as to what that actually means as far as an income level or a cost level of the structure or anything like that?
Yeah, well, in terms of the 60% AMI, again, so our price point at 60% AMI is going to be about $1,500 a month for these units at 60%.
Wow, that's pretty reasonable. I'm sure the realtor in the office, the audience would agree. I think that covers the questions I had. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Mr. Donaldson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to actually talk. I know your attorney's not here. I wanted to also get some clarification on the deeded rights as well. I am a neighbor to Indian Brook. I live in Manamint Beach Shores Association. I walk through Indian Brook all the time with my son and him riding his bike, and I understand the roads there. I understand the traffic. I understand how things get a little bit more escalated in summer. But with that being said, I do find the project being a little isolated in the fact that it's coming off State Road. I'm also concerned about the beach access in regards to the deeded rights, and I'm concerned about the HOA fees that are associated with Indian Brook. Was that anything that you had discussed with Indian Brook, or has it come up in conversation?
Yes, so in regards to the Indian Brook Association, I have no problem with working with the association. If they want this project to become a part of their association, it can become a part of it, and the 5 single families and then the one, we could work on that. If they didn't want the multi-unit building to be a part of the association, but they wanted the 5 single units to be a part of the association, that's not a problem. I guess where I'm going with that is I'm completely amenable to working with Indian Brook Association on whatever they want that to look like. In respect to the beach rights, I don't want to sit here and take away beach rights from anybody, especially if they're moving into the community. But again, if that's something I have to work with the association on, and if it turns into, they can't have a parking pass or whatever, nobody can certainly forbid somebody from walking to the beach. Again, to what I just said, I have no problem with working with the association, again, to achieve some sort of comfort level on what the beach rights look like. Again, I think that's going to be the theme of everything that I'm going to keep answering tonight is that I'm the guy that actually wants to try to work with the neighbors in whatever capacity I possibly can. I understand that everybody might not love the density or they might not love the concept, but I'm standing here as somebody that's actually willing to work with the community. I wouldn't be offering these units at 60% AMI if I didn't have a commitment to our community. So I need to keep reinforcing that whatever that needs to look like between myself and the association, I'm willing to work with them in whatever capacity I can.
Now, at any time, the multifamily units, there are not going to be any kind of seasonal rental.
No, sir. They're going to
Okay.
they're going to have to sign a standard lease. It'll be 12 months minimum per unit. And if somebody moves out, then it'll be reoccupied. Somebody can stay for 24 months if they so choose, but it's not going to be seasonal at all. It'll be a minimum of at least 1 year.
And then the single-family homes, those are going to be sold at market or?
Correct.
All
Yep.
right.
So the single-family homes are going to be sold at market to help offset the costs of doing the multifamily building.
Okay. And there was some statements being said in regards to you weren't really looking in doing a traffic study. I don't know if you want to clarify that, or do you have an understanding of what the traffic is like down there? I mean, so again, I pull out of Manhattan Beach Boulevard. I try to go to Cedarville. That corner at that curve at Tiny Town. Everyone's flying there, and I know you're a developer, you're not traffic control, but I think it is a little bit of concern about pulling out in that area in regards to the traffic there. But I think that's more of a citizens issue. You know, as the citizens that live in that area, we should be talking to our police department about it. We should be talking to our town manager about it. We should be asking for more patrols or traffic stops in that area, because everyone flies down there. And I'm not putting it on you, but I know that you're the type of person that you are willing to have those type of conversations if they're needed to those different people. So I'm just putting that out there for you. Just looking at my notes, I'm sorry. Give me 1 second. I think I do want to make a statement to the public. So I've heard a few things in regards to the development being considered low-income housing, being concerned about how many people are going to be living in the homes, living in apartments and things like that. As we deal with the housing issue in the state, there's mandates that we from the state have to deal with as well in regards to providing housing, affordable housing. So what's affordable in Plymouth is not going to be affordable in Drake. What's affordable in Drake is not going to be affordable in Easton. But every town is obligated to have and create affordable housing bank or have these affordable housing available to us. Affordable housing is not Section 8. Affordable housing is not low-income housing. My grandparents lived in low-income housing in Philadelphia. And we moved here to Massachusetts so we could have a better quality of life. And I've heard everyone mention about the quality of life in Indian Brook. Why are we not looking at the people that maybe live in these type of units, why don't they have the right to have a quality of life as well? So I say these statements to, for some people to maybe do some soul searching. I commend you on the project that you're doing, especially for the fact, I've talked to you before in regards to veteran housing. Even the gentleman that bought his house 5 years ago using his VA loan, there's some people that still can't use their VA loan and buy a home in Plymouth. I'm a veteran. I couldn't use my VA loan to buy the house that I live in Manamint Beach. In these times, and I'm sorry if I'm a little bit on a soapbox, and I apologize, but in these times, please, I think we need to have some openness in regards to people that are not as fortunate as us or not as lucky as us. I wouldn't have been able to afford my home if I tried to buy it today. I wouldn't be able to afford to live in Manamint. And some of you, if you may not even be able to afford to live in Indian Brook at today's prices. I believe this is a good project, and I commend you on the AMI. And I know as far as the concerns about conservation and all that, those things will be dealt with because they'll be dealt with by going through the proper channels and through conservation and making sure that the project is done right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I yield my time.
Thank you, Mr. Donaldson. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a few questions in some detail. First of all, you said this evening that Sheridan will own and operate the 8-unit rental building. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And so you'll continue to do so after it's constructed?
Yes, sir.
Next, I saw that there was a response to a question about drainage along Hyannis Road, where you're going to be adding a 12-inch berm along the side of the road. And it's just a small mark on the plan. Do you anticipate extending that to some degree throughout along the property line or even further?
Again, that's something, if in working with the neighbors, they wanted extended. That was just a comment that engineering had made. So if something needs to be done on Hyannis Road to help try to mitigate any kind of current problems, I can certainly look at it.
Okay, some comments on the site plan and the building. On the building, there's a deck by the entrance to each of the units, several levels. It looks like it's very narrow. I'd like to have you consider that maybe it's a little more generous right at the front doors to the units.
Yeah, the plans might not have done it justice, but that deck is going to be 4 to 5 feet wide.
I noticed that there's no sidewalks or walkways to the entrances to the individual houses. Will there be?
There will be, off of the driveways.
Also, the walkway from the 8-unit building towards the parking lot really is going towards the 3-spot area of parking. And so I would think that there'd be a walkway so that people that are parking in spots 4 through 12 would be able to get to those spots without having to go across the grass or whatever.
Yeah, there'll be a walkway, and in regards to the sidewalk that's coming down, it'll obviously be ADA compliant.
And then the retaining wall that was mentioned earlier, it's going to be 3 or 4 feet high. Do you know what that's going to be constructed of?
It'll be under 4 feet in height, and it'll be one of those segmented interlocking block retaining walls.
And that is what I have for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Grandy.
Thank you, through the chair. I'll try to be short and brief because I'm not feeling too good this evening, as I was under the weather yesterday and today. Could you please inform me where this gate that was discussed is going to go?
Yes.
And where, please?
The gate, if it was to be installed, would be along the property line here to, again, benefit this adjoining neighbor.
And how far does that road where you're putting the gate, or maybe putting the gate, potentially putting the gate, how far into Indian Brook does that road go? Or how far, who are we stopping from going in?
So that road or way, driveway, whatever you want to call it, stops at their driveway. So the only reason why I'm essentially proposing the gate is so that way traffic can't go through and end up in the neighboring driveway.
Right, so I'm trying to see what's north of that property line, a little more than what's on that plan.
There's a house.
Just a house.
And this driveway opens up into the adjoining the neighbor's driveway.
So
It doesn't actually touch Hyannis Road.
So there's two houses involved on that driveway?
There's one house that's actually involved with this driveway, and they
So
have a little.
you're going to work with them to create something?
Correct, yes.
But we don't know what that's going to be yet?
Yes, we're still talking about it. They don't know if they want it to be a gate or whatever, and obviously I explained to them that if it's a gate, we would have to still give emergency vehicles access through a Knox box.
Okay, so let's go to the right-hand side of the property on that street. Is that street an unaccepted street?
Hyannis Road?
Yes.
Yes,
It's
unaccepted.
considered unaccepted. It's not a
Yes.
private way. A private way is a gated community, okay? Myself being on the Roads Advisory Committee, I wrote legislation, sponsored it, that went through the State House to get legislation passed in the town of Plymouth. So the town is able to spend public funds on unaccepted roads, not private roads, unaccepted roads. So this is an unaccepted road. And the roads within Indian Brook are also considered unaccepted?
The town currently plows Hyannis Road.
Right, so it's an unaccepted road. It was a private road, it wouldn't be getting plowed
Yes.
by the town. Okay, so it's important also to me, as far as going through this whole process, the Management Steering Committee also unanimously approved your proposal to them at their meeting, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Then if we look at what you could do in place of this development, approval not required.
That is
Which would be
correct.
7 individual homes?
It would be a combination of duplexes and one single.
Okay, which would take up how much of the property? All of it,
The
except
en-
for wetlands?
Except for the entire lot would be turned into lots.
So as we have designed this, or you have designed this as a village open space development, and might I say it's a superior design, because we're also creating 8 affordable units, 4 of them at 60% AMI, which is very important as far as affordability is concerned. When we talk about affordability, we're talking about workforce housing, we're talking about teachers, we're talking about firemen, we're talking about policemen, we're talking about people that we want to bring into the community and work within the community. I've lived in Plymouth for over 30 years, and my 2 children who graduated from the Plymouth public school system could not afford to buy in the town of Plymouth because it's unaffordable. And we also have mandates through the state, through the MBTA Communities Act, that's requiring us in areas for more housing. And the governor was just here 2 weeks ago. The governor of the state of Massachusetts has put a big target on the town of Plymouth as far as housing concerned. I'm sorry, I digress. Let's go back to the project.
It's easy to do.
It's very easy to do in this environment, yes. So what this project does is, as far as the septic systems are concerned, they have to be approved, Title V accepted, and approved through the Board of Health review, which they will have to do if they build anything as far as requiring a septic system is concerned. And I've been a big advocate of the past, if this was directly on a lake, a pond, directly on the ocean, then it would be a low denitrification system. So when you're doing this shared system, it's a higher grade septic system, correct?
Yes, it's going to be a Presby system, which many engineers now consider the superior system for this kind of development.
Right, so we're not going to have issues with affecting the groundwater, the brook, the river, the man-made dugout that we were talking about that was dug out man-made. We're not going to affect the environment with these septic systems, because everybody in this room, including myself, I have a septic system in South Plymouth. Unless you live in downtown or a sewer is available through the town, everybody has a septic system. When you moved into your house and wanted to move into Plymouth, they had to build this home. This is a superior design to me, and I think it's very important that we look at how much land is being, open space being saved here and not infecting the environment by completely clearing and eliminating everything that's on this piece of property and this design. Let me see, a septic system. I would like to see in this project is to clearly delineate that open space.
That'll be a part of the special permit that
Through-
obviously will work with staff.
Not concrete, not granite bounds, but concrete bounds, something that's not that expensive. And it doesn't have to be every 5 feet, but I would want to see that the open space is clearly delineated so it isn't clear cut in the future.
Yep.
As far as that's concerned. Now, we talk about the road itself. Are we utilizing existing, or are we doing more work to this particular road for the development?
The only work that's going to be done to the road as it currently sits is going to be the additional parking.
Right, okay. The 8-unit affordable workforce housing building is going to be also sprinkled, correct?
That is correct, and that was part of what I was working with fire department on literally Friday on just making sure the hydrant placement was good for them with where their sprinkler hookup would be to the multifamily building.
Right. Now, I remember going through the whole packet here. You had some stormwater information. You did test pits and everything else, so you know what your drainage needs to be, and it needs to be approved through the engineering department in the town of Plymouth. Mr. Bennett brought it up. I trust Mr. Bennett as far as looking at these set of plans and the DPW staff. So it's very important, and it's in your plan as far as controlling the stormwater, not only from the street, but also from the homes, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so the stormwater is covered also. As of right, homeowner association, I have a question on that. The current homeowner association, I'm not familiar with whatever it is. They're not paying to plow the roads. In your presentation here this evening, this is supposed to be plowed and maintained by the residents that live there. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So how would you incorporate that into an association that they don't plow and maintain the roads? It'd be kind of hard to do that, right?
Are you talking about, so
The
this-
HOA that you're going to create with
Yeah,
this.
it'll be a separate.
It's gonna be separate
It'll be a
and
separate
distinct.
HOA from Indian Brook Association.
Right, so you're not going to incorporate Indian Brook and this into Indian Brook's HOA.
No, it would be up to the discretion of Indian Brook Association if they wanted to let the people in this association join Indian Brook, just in literally membership only with beach rights or community gatherings or whatever. But
Right.
this association will be responsible for maintaining and plowing its own property.
Yeah, we have broker in the room, right? A broker, real estate broker? What I don't want to see happen, and we've seen happen, and Tim Bennett can tell you because he sits on the Roads Advisory Committee with me, is people come in and say, I want my road plowed and accepted. But the decision that was done 25 years ago states that they're responsible for the plowing and maintaining of their road. So I want it to be clear, and when the homes are sold, that it's in the deed, in the language, and explain to the residents that buy or rent that they understand that this is not to be plowed and maintained at all by the town of Plymouth, right?
That is 100% correct.
Okay, so that was an important aspect as far as I'm concerned, even though I hope to be here 30 years from now, but I highly doubt it. But anyway, thank you very much for answering my questions. I've taken way too much time already. Mr. Chairman, I yield my time.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yes, Ms. Lind.
Two points. One, there's a member of the public online who addressed you earlier who has a hand raised. I know that you've closed public comment, but I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Okay, so as I explained, public comment is closed. We're not accepting further public comment, so I appreciate the interest, et cetera, but that's not something we're going to be doing at this point.
Thank you. And the second matter, this may have been stated already, but I didn't recall if it was precise. I want to make clear for the record that because Mr. Higgins is recused from this matter, the alternate member, Christopher Smith, will be a voting member on this special permit.
Thank you. Appreciate the reminder. So, back to me. Very briefly, I just want to make sure that as we go through this, we're clear in case we're putting forward conditions, et cetera, on this. Number one, we've had questions regarding the title and the deeded rights. You brought your attorney here, I appreciate that, et cetera. It's not something that we as a board deal with. That is a legal matter. We are not a court up here, and we don't make our determinations based upon that. But would you have any objection as part of your submission to the planning department, which would be available to the public, with providing the title information, the research that was done?
Yeah, or the information itself or a summarization. I'm certainly willing to work with staff on whatever that write-up needs to look like. And just speaking to that, I know the first speaker in public comment had said we had committed to giving them that information. The only reason why we didn't was because they reached out to Andrew Golden on Monday before we even had a chance to reach out. So to me, it was just a non-issue at that point. So yes, I am willing to work with staff on giving you some sort of write-up or whatever.
Okay. Secondly, you've talked about the willingness to install a fence or other, depending upon what the residents on Hyannis Road want, and obviously that would be going adjacent to your property line. So that's something that, again, if we said you're willing to do that, if called upon with, obviously to reasonable standards with respect to agreement with the community.
Yeah, whether it be a fence or additional screening, again, yes, whatever that needs to look like, I'm willing to work with the neighbors on it.
Okay. And I know you're talking about the potential for a gate, and that's obviously something that's going to be subject to the interest of the homeowner beyond your property. They're the ones who would be the most directly affected by that. Would you have any objection to precluding access directly to Hyannis Road from your development by including that restriction in the deeds for the single family and in the leases for the multifamily?
No, I guess I would just need some clarification on what we wanted precluding to look like, whether it be just vehicle traffic or whatever, or, doing whatever we can to, if it's posting no parking signs on Hyannis Road. So, whatever that language, if we need to put some sort of language in place to make people more comfortable, I don't have any objection to it.
I just want the people in Hyannis Road to feel comfort that the people in your proposed development would not be using that area as a cut-through to get back. If they're going to do it, they're going to have to go around to Hyannis Road and follow the traffic the way everybody else does.
Correct. Yeah, I have no problem with that whatsoever.
Okay. Thank you. I have no further questions. Mr. Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I just have two quick questions and comments. So, excuse me, the Presby system, Ms. Flaherty, is that considered a nitrogen-reducing system, an innovative alternative technology by Mass DEP? So that would basically inject...
It's not considered an IA system as a D-nite, like a fast system or a jet system would be considered. The regulations and the standards associated with it, with its separation to groundwater, are reduced from a typical, pipes and stone or a concrete chambers and stone type system. So there is a environmental, positive aspect of these systems. These are mostly done for larger shared systems. This is kind of the Cadillac that you would, put in instead of a pressure dosing system or something along those lines.
I see. So it does provide additional protection for
It does. And
groundwater.
again, it reduces even in the approval letter with Title V and Mass DEP, the reduction, you can even reduce, the separation from groundwater. We don't need that in this situation based off the test bits we've done, but it does allow for that.
I see. So the DEP says that this is
a superior
system,
correct.
and it could actually be built closer to the groundwater than a conventional one.
Correct. I don't want to make the statement that it's a denitrification system, because it doesn't have any special components to the tanks or anything along those lines.
Right. Okay.
But it is a environmental friendly system for sure.
Okay, thanks. I did see a couple of tanks in there, so you must be pumping in some places.
When you do a multi-unit system, it has to be 2 tanks in series or a
Okay,
2
so you're
compartment
getting
tank.
additional treatment there as well.
So you're getting the separation. So either it's going to be a larger tank with a concrete baffle in the middle that separates it, or you do 2 tanks in series, which reduces the size of the tank, but they're just the gallons are the same because of the 2 tanks.
I see. I see. Thank you for that. So I want to address the sight distance on the driveway. Do you know what the speed limit is on 3A out in front of there?
We looked at it from a sight distance standpoint based off where the driveway is on the outside of the curve. So we have, a little over 400 feet in each direction based off where the cars are going to be exiting the driveway.
Okay.
We didn't look too closely into the speed limit. Someone mentioned 45, but I'd have to verify that. Our kind of examination was really making sure that the sight distance and from the exit could be seen in both directions, and it wasn't, obstructed by the curve.
Okay, so it was sort of a trick question because I was there, and it changes from 40 to 45 right there, almost
Right there on that spot.
right at the driveway. Yeah. So, based on the design speed or the speed limit, there's a specified required sight distance based on those speeds.
400 is kind of the number we always try to achieve, especially we've done other projects on State Road, and that's kind of the number. If you can make that number work on less volume areas, sometimes 200 feet is kind of the gold standard. But here with 400 was kind of like before we would engage with the traffic engineer was the number we needed.
Okay, all right, thank you. So, just I know that was a concern and it was brought up by several people of some anecdotal evidence of traffic crashes or accidents or problems there. So the only other comment I had is I wanted to commend Mr. Sheridan on both funding this project without asking the town for any money, because we've had other projects come before us that asked for millions of dollars to help buy down, as he just stated, the cost of the affordable units. So kudos to you for that. I also wanted to commend you on addressing the concerns that the Management Village Steering Committee requested that initially that 8-unit building was a box. And to my mind and to some of the other members of the Management Village Steering Committee, it was not very pretty, not very architecturally interesting. And I think the rendering that we saw tonight is a huge improvement. It's a much more architecturally interesting and attractive layout. So thank you for that. So those are all my comments. I think I'm done at this point.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. At this point, I will entertain a motion from the board.
What is our motion? Is this to approve or to recommend approval?
No, this is to approve. We are the deciding body here.
Okay, so I make a motion to approve the project.
Mr. Bennett, are you willing to add in as the conditions the 3 items that I had stated, which were to provide the agreement to provide documentation regarding the rights, the deed rights to the property, the willingness to provide additional screening, whether that be natural or in the form of a fence, based upon resident input, and the willingness to restrict vehicular access from the development directly to Hyannis Road through the neighbor's cut-through property?
Yes, I'm willing to amend the motion to include those with the stipulation that that third one specifically states vehicular access, because I don't think you can prevent people from walking across their frontage. Whether they can climb that hill or not is another matter.
Okay.
So moved.
I have a motion.
Second.
I have a second. Further discussion? I'm just going to give my 2 quick points on this. First, just to remind the neighbors that what we're here to discuss is 2 requests. First, for approval of a village open space development, a VOSD, and secondly, for the allowance of affordable housing. Those are the things that this board has jurisdiction over. With respect to the VOSD, we've heard that the requirement for a VOSD is that they maintain 40% open space. This developer is proposing 58+% open space. If they were to build as a matter of right, they need maintain no open space. So that is an improvement over that. That meets our VOSD requirements. With respect to the affordable housing request, this is a site of 2.54 acres. The developer can build 7 units as of right. That's, again, a document that was provided to us, reviewed by planning board staff to verify that those are as of right developments. So at a minimum, what we're saying is if we don't approve anything at all, they can, without coming to anyone, go to the building department, pay their fee, get a building permit, and build those 7 units. So really what we're talking about here is 5 units, because 1 unit is existing right now. We're literally talking about 5 additional units. 5 additional studio bedroom units of affordable housing. That's the difference between what you can do as a matter of right versus what we're being asked to approve. We've talked about the fact that these are units that are below not just the standard for affordable housing, but more affordable, being done without any taxpayer money. And that has not been done in Plymouth before. Developers don't do that because they lose money on affordable housing, especially in today's market. Ask anyone who's trying to do a renovation or everything costs more. So when we commend a developer, as Mr. Sharon would, the board members commend him for doing this work, that's not hollow praise. That's something that is, I would say, extraordinary, but extraordinary would suggest that it means it's above the norm. It's unprecedented. It hasn't happened in my memory here in Plymouth. That's a big deal. So the question again is, given that extraordinary, that unprecedented approach, we look at those 5 additional units and say, does that overburden this site? And I don't think we've heard anything that suggests that it does. Yes, traffic is bad on State Road. Traffic is bad everywhere. It doesn't get any better. But will 5 studio units make a substantive difference onto State Road? No, it really will not. Will it otherwise impact the residents in Indian Brook? Not anything above what would normally happen, because they're not directly driving. Sir? Sir, you are interrupting. What did we have this discussion? If you can't stay, leave. Please do. You are more than welcome. Thank you so much for coming out.
Thank you for bettering our experience.
Sir? And now you're proving exactly why Plymouth has such a wonderful reputation when it comes to welcoming new people. Thank you. Oh, the air feels clearer already.
There's a motion on the table, Mr. Chairman.
With that in mind, I don't see how this board can turn away what's being proposed. I understand people don't like it. They don't like change. No one does. And no one wants change in their neighborhood. But every neighborhood in Plymouth is going to have to accept some change. Every neighborhood. And when something makes sense for the community, we have to take action on that. If this had been a situation in which this had truly overburdened the area, this board wouldn't have approved it. And I can tell you that because I voted against one recently, and I got a lot of flack for that. But I don't mind that. We're doing what we believe is best, so I will be voting in favor of that. Any further comments from the board? Seeing none, I call for a vote by hands. All in favor? It is unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Sheridan. Thank you to the community for coming out. We do appreciate and we do listen to everything you say.
Thank you.
We have nothing further on our agenda this evening. Anybody with any other matters?
Make a motion to adjourn.
I have a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second? All in favor? Planning board is adjourned for the evening.